I call to order the special meeting work session for the Cochise County Jail District Board of Directors, Tuesday, February 11th. We are here in the Board of Supervisors hearing room, 1415 Melody Lane in Building G. Pursuing ARS 38431.02H, the public will have physical access to the meeting place 15 minutes prior to discussion. They're also available to join the meeting via Microsoft Teams and computer and a mobile app and via phone. Work sessions are a time for the county staff to inform and discuss agenda items with the Board of Supervisors and the Jail District Board, and public comments will not be taken. We'll start off with roll call. District 1. Crosby is here. District 2.
Gomez is here.
And District 3. Antonori is here. All supervisors and Jail District Board members are present and in person. Items for discussion. Can I get, let's see, we don't have to do this. I keep forgetting we're just in a work session. Let's get Phil, give us a presentation so we can discuss where we are with the jail planning study, and let's take it from there.
Absolutely. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Phil Bourdon. I'm going to just give you an overview of where you are on the overall project, which includes several aspects of it. The first thing I would go over is when I came on this project working for the county, I recommended they accomplish two things to move your project along: is you do a jail planning study, and that you eventually also bring on an owner's representative for owner's representative services. That's a firm that provides very detailed and comprehensive design and construction management services while you're going through the design and construction of the project. These two, currently I'll give you an update on where you are on both of those services. But both of them are considered professional services, so that you go through a process that is a qualifications-based selection process to acquire those services. The first thing you do is get request for qualifications developed for that particular professional service. You then develop the process to select the firms. You typically, and we did this, is put together a interview and a team in the county personnel to rank the statement of qualifications and eventually interview the firms and rank them after the interviews are done, taking that top qualified firm, then entering into contract negotiations for a scope of services and fee, and bring it to the Board of Supervisors. That's typical process for complying with state law and bringing professional services on board a county. The next thing was specific to the jail planning study RFQ, and I'm just giving you the schedule of where we have been. We started back in February of 2024, releasing the RFQ to the public, going through committee rankings, interviews, and eventually ranking the highest ranked firm by May 31st, and then eventually we're able to bring a contract to the Board of Supervisors for Chin Planning for the planning study, and that was on August 27th, 2024. Once the board awarded that contract, well, let me back up. That contract included some key issues that I just want to go over. The services to be provided by Chin Planning was a comprehensive assessment of the county's criminal justice system. That's important because that way you analyze what's going on in your criminal justice system, try to streamline it so that you try to make sure you don't have people in your jail either that don't need to be there or longer than they need to be there. The second point would be inmate population forecast to determine capacity requirements for a new jail. Operational concepts for a new jail, including staffing and space requirements. That gets you what you need for your jail. And then looking at future space requirements for the Superior Court, Justice Courts, and Sheriff's Administration. The reason we did that was included partly to make sure you're planning, should you ever want to use the site that you put this jail on for additional services in your county's criminal justice system, you'll at least know if you can fit it there, and make sure you can accommodate the future uses if you desire as a Board of Supervisors. The last portion that I point out included with the planning services is cost estimates for operations, site development, and construction of a new jail. because the project is for a new jail. Next, Karen Chin, who is the she's the principal of Chin Planning. She began collecting data in September and came on site in the last week of September 30th, holding a kickoff meeting with the Technical Advisory Committee. Real quick, the Technical Advisory Committee is made up of county administration, facilities, sheriff's office, procurement. It's a technical advisory, the courts. It's a technical advisory committee to review materials that is being presented and give comments back to the consultant.
What is, help me out, what is TAC?
Technical advisory.
Okay.
So that's an internal county committee
Gotcha.
that the consultant works with to not only gain information, but to produce information and get comments back from.
All right.
So in November, the week of November 18th, again, Chen was on site for interviews, data collection, and site for the existing facilities. The presentation during that week was made to the TAC on the preliminary criminal justice system assessment, kind of an overview of your criminal justice system. And some of the things that will eventually come out of there will be key findings to hopefully assist in making sure, again, back down to you have a streamlined criminal justice system. I'm talking courts, probation, county attorney, everyone working together so that people that are near jail are there because they need to be, not because of any other issues.
Bureaucratic delays or whatever.
Several things. Just to review your criminal justice system, make sure there are elements being implemented to make sure if people do not need to be in your jail system, they are not in there.
Let me ask you a question. So you make these assessments, right? And then do the courts accept it, or do we have to go through a whole new process? Are they they're part of this study? They're in agreement with whatever came up, right?
Well, the courts are sitting at the table and receive those preliminary findings for review.
And then they would be able to incorporate those changes.
Those changes would eventually either be hopefully adopted by them if they were necessary. Some may already be being used by the courts, quite frankly. Several of the things that they identified are already being taken care of. But if there are other issues, they'll be identified and provided to those other departments or elected officers. And you'll see those recommendations come through, and you may see them come to you in the future with ways to implement them if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
In December, again, not long ago, Chin Planning again was on site. Week of December 16th, we had a TAC meeting, a Technical Advisory Committee meeting. That's when we were reviewing inmate population forecasts and again, just updating the criminal justice system assessment with any other items that had been reviewed by Chin Planning. Reviewing space programming standards. That's to make sure you're looking at space that is appropriate for jails. We also did a 2-day jail facility programming session Chin Planning did with the jail. That was to review general operational concepts, detailed review of all facility components that are needed in the jail, developed a preliminary inmate housing and bed configuration. And these are all things that, again, translated to when she came out in January, the week of January 27th. We had a meeting on the 28th where she provided key findings of the justice system assessment, jail revised and updated jail forecasts.
But she came out here on the 27th of January?
Yes.
To meet with the Technical Advisory Committee
Yes.
on draft information.
Okay.
And one of the most important things is to come up, she came up with draft summary space allocation programs for the jail, which is, again, the primary project that you're looking at, and the sheriff's office and courts. And when I say courts, that includes space if you had to move your entire criminal justice system like your county attorney and others. The reason we do that sheriff's office and courts space analysis is not because it's part of the project. It's because when you start looking at sites, and we'll go over site information in a minute, when you go over sites, you want to make sure at least the board has the knowledge if they're able to accommodate not only future capacity for the jail, but if you desire to have future offices for any other elements of your criminal justice system at the site you eventually construct on. So that's why you're putting in and looking at the draft summary space allocation for those other elements, even though they're not part of
Is this where the confusion comes in, where it becomes a jail justice center?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
and maybe I can also say another reason. Sometimes I'm the problem. Just take that hit. I worked on a project that was a detention center, and it was located adjacent to our juvenile center, and it also had with it a project, a mental health component, another structure, and we called that project a justice center. So sometimes when I speak about even this project, I've had to say, this is a jail project, so I apologize, because my background was we had used the terminology a justice project because the detention center we built had 2 high-volume courts with the jail, and it had a mental health facility adjacent to it. So it didn't just have detention. So we called it a justice center project. So sometimes in the beginning of this project, I use that terminology, and it may have caused some confusion. That's why I really use with Cochise County jail project.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add to that, to Ms. Gomez's question, we were hearing that we were going to build a justice center, and we were getting beat up on that. And I went to Phil in a meeting. I said, you got to quit saying that because we're getting beat up on that for all the wrong reasons. It's not something we presented to the public or presented. So
Because it's
thank you,
even
Phil.
in paperwork, it was listed in the meetings before as it just, And so I got beat up on the campaign, like,
You're
what the
being
heck is
harsh.
going on? So it is a jail project.
Yes.
Okay.
Now,
And the portion of the study having to do with the space allocation is what's coming out of the general fund. So when it was presented, the contract was presented to the board, it was presented as the jail planning study from the jail district. And then we had it on the regular meeting agenda for the general fund to pay for that space allocation related to a justice center.
Okay.
And I think that did cause quite a bit of confusion. So we want to be very clear, this is about space allocation for future planning should the board decide to use it. Not that we are building it. We
You
are
do that.
building. Yes, we are
Okay.
building it.
Thank you for that
and I-
clarification.
that was one of the things I wanted to make sure we talked about today is that this is a detention project. There may be elements that are with detention, but the reason we did the space for many of these other facilities was the desire to make sure you were doing the proper planning on your site. Should you 10, 20, 30 years down the road decide you have other projects, you would at least know if you can accommodate those projects on the site. You may say you don't want to, you could say your sites that you have available won't work, but at least you would know they wouldn't work. Do you see what I'm saying? You would have that information. So moving past, that was the last meeting we had on site. Part of this study has a new jail site evaluation. The planning study group will review and evaluate potential sites provided by the county using several criteria, and I've listed them. They're all the kind of things you would review a site. You would look at traffic access, land uses, zoning and environmental regulations. More importantly, environmental issues, like do you have major floodplains? Do you have some environmental issues from the past, like landfills and others? Site size, topography, utilities, things that are normally you're going to look at when you try to site a facility.
Crosby District 1, what do you mean by topography?
Flat ground versus hills. And I'm not saying you can't build on hills. You can always do mass grading, but there's a component that costs you sometimes.
Like nothing in Bisbee is flat.
Well, and any site has topography in most cases. But the topography we're talking here is to generally look at when you're doing an evaluation of these different sites, you're going to have different topography based on each site, and that will come out in your evaluation of each site. If there's a greater mass grading that needs to be done with a site, the consultant will hopefully point that out and say this is a challenge or at least an increase in the cost. It will be part of the analysis. Does that help?
Sure.
when I said utilities and future expansion, utilities are a big issue when you start siting something like this because taking utilities to a site can be very expensive versus linking into existing utilities. And one of the biggest things I talk about sometimes is, wastewater treatment. If you're in an area that wastewater treatment is at least available, that's really great versus having to actually decide, are you going to build your own plant with your jail at the time of inception? So these are things that will come out when the sites are evaluated. Access to emergency system, services. And one of the last things is impact of location in relation to all components of the criminal justice system. So, that's how it relates to, not only transportation from local jurisdictions, but transportation to and from courts,
Right.
or not. I mean, it's really what would the location impact related to the existing criminal justice system. Now, I've given you some generalized areas. They're, of course, going to look at several things that might come up on the site and what that is part of their evaluation.
And so I'm sorry, just to make sure that from State Route 191, that's the one that you're looking at a site near where the state prison is already up there, 191?
So
Okay.
you're right on the next slide is potential new jail site locations. The county has to provide the consultant with potential sites.
Mhm.
I worked early on in the project to identify sites that were either talked about during your jail outreach process or have been discussed by staff or anybody or makes sense. And so basically, I've got the site locations up on the screen. One of the first ones right in the south part of the county, middle part of the screen is the existing jail and sheriff's administration location in Bisbee. That's one of the sites to be evaluated. The site adjacent to this county administration complex, I added that. That's southwest of State Route 92 and Melody Lane. To your point, if you go east, I think that's what you were referring to is State Route 191 and North BDI Road. It's adjacent to the airport, and yes, I believe it's right next to a prison.
Yeah, it is.
So the whole point is we were trying to put it where we, throughout the county and had utilities as well as I believe some properties owned by the county in that area. So again, I'm not saying this is the site to put it. It's a site to evaluate.
Well, because especially since you got wells and we put a lot of money into that area, there's a lot of infrastructure there you don't have to create again.
And again, after I finish where the sites are, I'll
Yeah.
give you a comment on site evaluation process. But
Okay.
going over to the west, about just northeast of Sierra Vista, the intersection of Charleston Road and Mosen Road, somewhat close to Sierra Vista, but not right in the middle, just adjacent to that city. Sorry, to that municipality. I don't believe it's in the municipality. I think it's right outside in the county.
It's in the county, yeah.
And
The county owns property there that was actually discussed today in the meeting
thank you.
this morning.
Another one that came up was on State Route 80 and Davis Road, which is just south of Tombstone and adjacent to the Tombstone Municipal Airport. And then also on Interstate 10 at North Civil Road, east of Benson. These are the ones that we've provided to the consultants so far. And if there's an evaluation, I wanted to point something about when they go through these evaluations, when they look at it, we haven't said like, here's this parcel, because they're going to eventually define and say, we need X acres to contain this project. And then they'll go into this area and say, here's the issues that you have in this area. But that doesn't mean it's exactly in that location, east of here or west there. It can be moved slightly based on the needs of the county and final design. But what this does is get you to a point where the consultant will provide you, looking at the site, a matrix and ranking, hopefully, of those sites and all maybe the pros, cons, challenges that you have when developing those sites. And then it's ultimately your decision where you site that project. The next thing I would go over is, I mentioned the second thing I recommended moving forward with was owner's representative services. We did go out in June for those services with an RFQ, went through the process. At this point in time, we actually are reviewing the scope of work and services, scope of services and fee, and are actually ready to move that forward. One of the things I'm trying to do is schedule that to come to the board. At the same time, it really makes sense to move forward with some of the post-planning. So I'm trying to time it with how we end the planning project, which is coming up in May. The planning project is scheduled to conclude the month of May. And I'm trying to think about when we would time that during somewhat a couple months prior to it or about the time we complete the planning process. And then the last thing I was going to go over is next steps. I've given you a shotgun just real quick. You know, here's the things that we've kind of done to this point in time. One of the next things that I think you should look at is one, and Ms. Gilman and I have talked about that, is bringing in the planning study consultant to give you an update and on the planning elements. What's been going on in the study? What are the findings? What are the results up to this point? Because she has those draft components ready to go, and we're going to try to schedule a time for her to come in and make a presentation to. The second thing I would say is finalizing the planning study to identify the size of the new jail, number of inmates, number of inmate beds, configuration of the housing units. All these things are currently in draft. They need to be finalized, and basically evaluation of the potential new jail location, and eventually a decision by the board where that jail would be. Contracting for an owner's rep to provide design and construction management services. Another thing would be, and these are, I'm sorry, these are not on the presentation. One of the other things is determining project delivery method, which is how are you going to put that out to bid and design and construct it? Most of the time when you deal with projects in this county, you're going to be dealing with design, bid, build projects, your normal flood control, your normal road projects that you do. When you get into complex systems like a building of a jail, you're going to want to look at one of the alternative methods that is available in the state law. It's either design build or construction manager risk. But these are, those are the three choices you have to construct a building, is to go through the design process, put it out for bid, and construct with the low bidder. That's the typical method in statute. That is not an appropriate method for a complex facility like this. Or state law allows you to use more sophisticated methods where you bring the design team and construction management team together, like construction manager at risk or design build. And there's a whole bunch of information we can get you on that, but it's something I've preferred to do.
So Phil, this is something that you and I were talking about earlier. When you do something over and over and over again, you learn when you build stuff, right? So companies that, like, for example, these large developers build these subdivisions, and it's like 5 different houses. You get to choose which of the 5 designs you want, because they build these over and over and over. When you do that, you get a process down, your risk gets really managed, you likely don't have significant cost overruns because you know exactly what the materials cost, you know how long it takes to build those things. So having a company that builds jails, a construction company that's built jails, and having them build a jail relatively similar to jails they built in the past, reduce the schedule and cost risk by building the jail. Now, granted, building the jail in Utah versus building it here may also add risk. But for the most part, getting companies that have that jail construction experience, so we got lots of them. I mean, we have companies that build private jails. We have companies that build jails for the state, prisons. There's got to be a pool out there that has a lot of experience, and there's got to be a design that's relatively close to whatever Ms. Chin and the jail guys, Commander Bradshaw and these guys come up with the requirement that they need that could be close. Maybe only needs a couple knobs we got to turn to change the design, but it's already been built because in the long run, that reduces the risk of cost overruns. That reduces the time usually it takes to build it. You, instead of taking 3 years to build a custom design, those guys can probably build it in 18 months. That's what I'm getting at. So have we got a process to evaluate two things, the designs, to try to leverage existing designs that have already been built, and then find the companies that have built those designs, and then select from that pool of companies?
In that construction manager or risk or design build, you bring in those people. Because unlike a design bid build, remember I just said design bid build, that is a low bid. You can select your
Yeah, and half of those
architects.
guys maybe never built a jail before in their life.
The fact of the matter is, in state statute, you are allowed to go through a design build or construction manager at risk process to do design and construction. You select the firms that you're going to work with based on a very similar qualifications-based selection process that I just described for the planning study and owner's rep. It is bringing on people based on their qualifications, those two. If you do a design, bid, build, your construction company, you can try to put constraints on qualifications, but it doesn't work as well. But to your point, you have to go through the design process because it's a site-specific construction project.
Well,
But these people are going to be bringing those elements.
if you're building in a relatively, let's just say, in a three-dimensional world, right? You're doing a CAD model design. You're going to design that, and then later, after you do your site, you'll make modifications to that design to accommodate the site. So generically, though, there are drawing packages out there from jails that have been built all over the country, especially if you have companies that have built those jails. And when the private prison revolution was going on, and you had these private prisons, those guys were building those things in a year. Right? These guys were knocking these things out really, really quick because there was big money to be made. So they were in a hurry to get these things built and open. So you had companies that got very good at building these things quickly. What I'm getting at is, and again, when I've toured the prisons here, we have design packages already out there that are already done, that somebody paid hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to design. Why can't we find one that's close to what you want and adapt it? And then figure out where we want to build it.
I need to comment on that.
Yeah, sure.
I get that. The reality is that those people that own those packages are going to make you pay for them. I'm being very frank about that. That is not something you're going to go and get for a cheap amount, because even though that design was done, all the professionals that worked on that, again, I'm being very candid, all the professionals that worked on that are going to want to get paid, because they're going to have to re-stamp and reseal every drawing and every design report for that. So I
do that too. I mean, I get it. I put IP into stuff, and I want to control my IP, and I want to make money. But I can tell you, when I get a contract and I build something for the U.S. government, if they pay me to design that thing, guess who owns the design for that drawing? The government owns the design. So if the state of Arizona paid a private company to design a prison, or some other county paid a company to design the prison, they have rights, data rights.
They have certain rights, but they cannot use that product or sell it to be constructed elsewhere.
I'm going to have to get started on this because...
No, it's okay. I actually think we're kind of in the same...
Right.
When you bring on these...
I understand you would have to pay a license fee maybe to use that intellectual property, but if the design effort has already been funded and paid for by the government, whatever government that may be, that cost should not be reabsorbed. If you have to pay a license fee to use the design, which could be thousands of dollars, but I mean, it's better than paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to redesign it.
What we're talking about is, so like Karen Chin and Chin Planning. Right. So she's been doing this for 42 years, and it's jails, prisons, everything, and keeping up with all the state-of-the-art, equipment and design and supervision styles, like direct supervision versus linear supervision, and a way to go to both depending on your staffing at the time, those kind of things. So she can make something very similar to what she made 2 years ago in Yavapai County.
You're still making something new, though.
Well, sort of.
It's fitting with
right,
what they need.
It's new, but it's not. it's not custom. It's exactly like, it's still a modular design with a central control room, so many beds for single cells, maximum, medium, minimum, so many for juveniles, a mental health facility,
Right.
those kind of things. So it's all the same components. They might switch places, but because we bring in all those experts that have done this so many times, that it's pretty standard.
And I wanted to point out, we're kind of in the same stream there by bringing on the professionals, not only in planning, design, and construction, that do this every day. You're going to really reduce the cost because they're going to provide that information of what they did for the last 30 or 40 years or yesterday at another project and put it in play. So they'll be able to design it for you, for your site, for less than somebody that doesn't have that experience.
I
But
agree. Right?
the reason I bring that up is I've been asked this before about, in some ways, trying to take specific plans for specific areas and move them to other sites. There has to be a very complicated process of not only redesigning it, it's almost, you're going through the same process. It's not plopping it down in the same area because it is a different site with different other attributes on it, different topography, different utilities. There may be some internal things that translate over as Mr. Bradshaw said, is there's a lot of the elements that are going to transfer over very completely that they've been talking to Chin Planning about implementing, that have been implemented in other areas that they want implemented here. But the design process should go quick if you use design, build, or construction manager at risk. You can implement it fairly quickly. But in a year, I can't say a year.
No, I use that example.
No, I know.
Because these guys, the Sith Lord of Arizona politics, Chuck Coughlin, was doing all the private prison stuff. Those guys were putting those prisons up in a year.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, it's just.
And money is?
Right. They were private companies. There was a lot of incentives. They're able to use different contract mechanisms. I get it. And we were restricted by statute to certain ones. And that's a whole nother fight that I'll fight another day, because I do all sorts of different types of contracts with the federal government. The federal government has adopted numerous different contracting mechanisms. I don't know why the state pigeonholes us into a handful of
I'm glad you bring that up.
Yeah, it's
That's
bad.
why I bring up what's available to
Right.
us.
I know. But I mean, if the feds, and they're usually 10 times more bureaucratic, and if they can figure out there's ways to streamline the contracting process and share risk and maybe shift risk from the government to the contractor to government, whatever, to try to keep the cost. Because I'll tell you what, when I do firm fixed price contracts, I build all my risk in, and guess who pays? The taxpayer pays, because I build the government for that full dollar amount, right? And whether I realize that risk or not, if I don't, I pocket it. I pocket the difference, but I took the risk. And there's a way to create these contract vehicles where you spread that risk evenly between the government and the contractor. That's generally where the best price tag comes in, when there's an equal sharing of risk between the contractor and the government.
That is a description of a construction manager or risk.
I got you.
At least from a state level.
Right. So I'm just saying that just, again, my practical experience is that's kind of what we need to strive for. And the way you reduce risk is you get guys that know how to build the same thing over and over and over, and you use designs that have been built over and over and over, and then make whatever knob may be special for us because we're where we build it, or maybe we have something special that we need to deal with that you guys are dealing with that I don't know about, that like mental health things or something that you got to have a special room or wing or whatever. Then we add that on, we do a modification to that design, and we should be off and running. Then the guy, when he bids it, he goes, "Oh, I built this jail 5 times. I know exactly how this works." And then that helps us reduce that risk.
I think we're on the same page.
Okay. All right. Mr. Crosby.
I would like to know, how do we establish these numbers for inmate population forecast?
So when Chin Planning was looking at it, they looked at historical data, and then they went to the state census, and they looked at population and where the population forecast is. We even talked about the new port and what population increase that might create, and along with all the support for that new port. We might have new truck stops and gas stations and restaurants and everything else. And so, bringing all these people in with those population estimates and historical data because of the because of the population of the jail versus the population of the county. That's how that was determined.
And actually, she did
There's a
multiple.
whole lot more
She
to
did
it,
a
but
presentation.
Yeah, so you should do a Monte Carlo and she'll
Right.
calculate potential different numbers.
She does various projections using different aspects of change over time
Best case, worst case, most
and
likely.
makes a recommendation
And
to
like-
the Board of Supervisors.
and like Phil said, if during her evaluation of the entire criminal justice process, she finds that, if you guys use ankle monitors a whole lot more, we could build a smaller jail. That's
Right.
also, and so depending
Well,
on,
and if we get this border under control, then
Right.
your
yeah, so there's a lot
illegal
of,
alien population goes down.
yeah.
You
So
know,
she
there's
looked
all
at a
these
lot of
other,
things like,
you know,
if probation fixes this, then this will happen. If the
Right.
judges fix this, then, your population could be lower. But it all depends on, there's, like you said, worst case scenario, best case scenario, and everything in between. So
Okay, so if the inmate population related to the border decreases to near zero, which we hope it does, where would the border-related inmates come from? Do you foresee deportations, or is this jail being used as a deportation center for interior deportations this way?
There is discussion, Mr. Chair, members, in regards to, depending on what agreement the federal government, like we just said in a previous meeting, we come about, and that's where the funding would be a factor in this too. As an offset, that's possible. It's truly possible. We're not opposed to that on our side, as long as we have the infrastructure, funding, and means to do it.
we want to make sure that the county's taken care of first.
Yes.
And we don't want to make those same mistakes that some of our neighbors have made and overbuild,
Yeah.
thinking
yeah.
that we're going to get some kind of ICE contract or something like that, and then go upside down. So we want to make sure that
So again, the modular design that the state built for the ability to expand as population grows, right?
Mhm.
So they built, I think theirs is a 5, like a pentagon with cell blocks
Mhm.
coming off with a control center in the middle and everything controlled. And then they only build 2. And then if the population grows, they'll build the 3rd. And if it grows, they'll build the 4th. And then the other thing they're able to do is they're designed in a way, and this is back to, I'm sure Ms. Chin knows this stuff, but they're designed in a way where you can shut them down
Mhm.
and basically close them if the population drops as
Correct.
well. And that's why you maintain that core operations center, and then all you're managing is basically housing.
And Ms. Chin's already talked about that. Like the
Right.
difference between a kitchen for a 300-bed jail and a kitchen for a 500-bed jail is not that big. So you build for the 500, but you're only going to use it for the 3. So that core, all the core services,
Right.
you build for the big, and then the housing units you can add on later.
Right.
One of the biggest issues you just brought up is making sure that when you design it, as you said about shutting down certain pods or clusters, is that the actual facilities can be shut down. In some builds in the past, that has not been accommodated.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. So the jail design is critical, that it's designed in such a way that if your population drops, you don't have to keep it open because all the air conditioning and everything else is still connected to that thing, and you got to keep power and air and all that. You have to design it so that you could shut that down,
And Mr. Chair, just like we talked about in the previous meeting, when you have the epidemic over the last 4 years with the increase, 40 to 44% of our population over the last 4 years was border related.
Right, right.
And now you have that capacity to expand and open if you need it, but you don't have.
And then you could open it back up. Say a new administration comes in 8 years from now and the problem regenerates itself, and you got to open it back up. But for now,
Yep.
So the last thing, so I went over some of the issues like project delivery method. That is a key issue to eventually tick off and say which way would the board want to go. Not a decision right now, but in the future, you'll have to make that decision as a county because that requires, again, a statutory selection process of design professionals and construction management teams that you bring on based on qualifications. The other thing that I bring up about next steps and things just to understand about projects, acquiring real property necessary for a new jail project. Whether you site it in an existing location or a new location, you may be in the position where you have to acquire real property from property owners. That takes time. These are things that when I look at projects, you have to get out ahead of in the future. And then the last thing is acquire design and construction services for the project based on, what project delivery method you look at. These are the kind of things that you'll be having to go through after the study with Chin concludes. And then the last thing I would point out is Commander Bradshaw brought up something about overbuilding. That is the exact reason why I'm going through a planning study right now, is to make sure you have a basis for the number of beds that you select, so you don't overbuild, because this is some of the most expensive construction you have in a county or jail. So I've gone through it very quick. I'm sorry for the lengthy time. I get accused of speaking a lot sometimes. I got the slides down to 12. I originally gave Sheriff 40. So I'm here for any questions or to assist the board in any way you need.
Again, I'm interested in hearing from Ms. Chin on what she's got data-wise. I'm just looking at your map, at all the other.
Maybe in March? March 10th?
March 10th or so.
Yeah.
We're looking for that.
And I talked with Mr. Coxworth, Dan, because I had the state trust land issue, and he explained to me all the challenges with state trust land. So private property or existing government-owned county or city even owned property would be a much faster option than trying to get state trust land. But he did say we could do 40 or 50-year leases. We'd have to go with the land department and figure out what that lease is. And it may actually be cheaper to lease it than to buy it. So something that I want to talk to her about is, some of those potential options. Because if we can get a 40-year lease on 500 acres for, $25,000 a year, that's maybe that's the way to go. Or I don't know, whatever. We'll have to figure out what it is.
So I think once you determine a site,
Right.
and of course, as part of that evaluation, some of that will come into play. You'll understand.
Right. That's why I want to talk to her, because I'm trying to see all the, I got my Onyx hunt maps here, and you could see where all the land's at, who owns it, all in and around Tombstone, all along, 80 between Tombstone and St. David, down 90. North of Sierra Vista, across 82. There's a lot of private property out there.
On the sites you're looking, especially when I look at the one on 191, the county owns a lot of land, right, by the state person. Isn't that's
Yeah,
by
totally.
the airport?
Yeah.
Again, we tried to put sites in that were identified either during the outreach or during discussions with the county that made sense from access as well as ownership. Not all of your sites have ownership of the county, but they made sense from either they were brought up in the outreach or they made sense from at least having the area or location analyzed by the principal.
And we wanted to provide at least one site in every area of the county so that those could be evaluated, so that no area of the county was neglected for at least evaluation.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Crosby.
I am not soliciting a vote. However, in my opinion, we should independently explore the overall financial position of the sheriff's office and the jail. We should explore the amounts of money designated as related to the border in recent grants. That concludes my comments.
On that note, should we go to the budget?
Yeah. That's all county lands, by the way, Kathleen,
Right.
all around the airport there and all around where the prison's at too, by the way. So it's a significant chunk of dirt. Just saying. Do we have to switch meetings?
Nope.
Okay, we can go to, that's right, we're going to do agenda item number 2, discussion of the jail district budget for 24-25.
Okay.
We'll go to Steve. Are you going to read this one or Sharon going to do it?
We're going to tag team, I think. Yeah.
All right.
Forward to go.
So we wanted to talk to the board about the jail district budget. Just a briefing first to give you an overview. This is not any discussion of next year's fiscal year budget or preparation from the sheriff's office. This is just a check-in on the current status and history of the budget for your information to bring you up to speed. So we have the FY 23-24 budget summary. This would be last fiscal year. The
Sorry.
paper sitting in the microphone. So the tax collection began in January 2024. So you'll see the revenue is only half a year at 4.4 million. And that's because it's only half a year of collection. Running through this, I won't read every line to you. The high points are that the maintenance of effort is used for operation and maintenance, jail medical services, and jail mental health. First, we used maintenance of effort, which was what was in the general fund prior to 23-24. So 22-23's expenditures from the general fund for the jail are then calculated and transferred monthly to the jail district based on that statutory formula. The important thing to note here is that the over-under line is 67,000 for last fiscal year. That means the 67,689 was transferred from the half cent to cover overages from the jail district, operation and maintenance, and other lines.
Okay. We'll go into that in some further slides.
And then in 24-25 budget summary, this is just year to date. We've budgeted for a full year of revenue, and the actual so far is 5.2. We're trending well for the full year. We anticipate at least a 8.4 million was the projection. We should reach that without any concern, or maybe probably even exceed it. You want to take over?
Sure. So I think one of the good things to point out on this slide is the cash reconciliation at the bottom. So I know a lot of individuals are concerned about exactly how much money we have or have used from the new half-cent tax. So I went ahead and prepared a reconciliation for you guys that rolled the starting balance from last fiscal year, rolls in the additions that we've received in the year, so the revenues we've brought in, subtracts out the expenses that we have authorized from the new half-cent tax, so chin planning and our consulting fees, and then gives you an ending balance. And then rolls in your current overrun. And I want to specify that this is not a budget overrun. This is a outpacing of the MOE and revenues. So our expenses within the jail fluctuate. You know, we have certain times where we have 3 pay periods in a month versus 2 pay periods in the month. But the MOE transfer is flat across the year. So we may at times outpace those.
So you're saying by June, that number could go down?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So the bottom line down there is as of Q7/25, that is the actual cash in bank on hand of the new half-cent tax. So 9.353 million. That's a very healthy number that we're looking at right now based on just a year's worth of collection. Any questions on that? Anything else that's on that slide? Mm-hmm. All right, so just a little bit of historic on what the maintenance of effort is, how we calculate that, how we reach the numbers that we reach in every year. So we grabbed all of the expenses, any kind of reimbursements and revenues that we got in FY 22-23. We compiled all that together and came up with $6.8 million that we had spent in the general fund for the maintenance, operations, and programs of the current jail prior to the jail district. So that was our bill we footed. And then we go ahead in the next years and in the subsequent years, we adjust that figure by the lesser of the two changes, either the difference between the prior year's implicit GDP implicit price deflator or the lesser change between the tax levy limitations from 24 to 25 in this year, or sorry, last year's 24-25. The prior year would be 23-24. So the first year's FY '23 that we had the MOE, it was 6.8 million. This year's that went down to 6.5 million. We will find out fairly shortly here what the GDP price inflator or deflator is going to be for our next fiscal year's calculations, but we do not have that yet. We do have the tax levy limitation already, but we need those two figures so that we can decide which factor is going to be used, because we have to go with the lesser one, and then we'll calculate. Sorry. Was that a lot?
I got a comment.
Go ahead.
When I was on the city council, there's a local accountant that wanted to know the income from sales tax every month or whenever I got it. And I don't remember what the lag was or anything like that. But every city, if they have that information, that'll be paying attention to it,
Yes.
especially particularly Dallas and
I know.
place else that's hurting.
Right. So we actually, as an administration, we go over that every month.
Okay, the cities,
No, the counties.
okay,
Sales tax trends.
So when are we talking to the treasurer about investments? When was that?
That's April.
April?
Yeah, because that's when her investment broker would be here.
I just see all this money sitting there, just not doing anything but collecting dust.
Oh, she'll fill you.
Hide it in the back.
It's not sitting in a.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't see a dividend
Yeah,
from
yeah.
the investment that was made. That's what
So
I'm
that's
getting at.
April 14th.
Oh, all right. Because I'm just trying to
And Mr. Chairman,
He showed his interest in it.
if I may, while we're,
hide it in the back there. I looked and I didn't see her. I'm like, oh, she's not here.
while we're talking about maintenance of effort, I just want to clarify for everybody, especially the public, that so there's been a lot of allegations that the sheriff's office was spending tax money on stamps and paper and everything
That's
else.
because
And I
the
want-
warrants say jail district.
That's because that maintenance of effort go into jail districts. So
I got you.
everything is jail district.
I got
No
you.
matter what it is. But we do our very best to stay within the maintenance of effort. The only time we go outside is we've traditionally never been fully funded for inmate meals, and we've traditionally never been fully funded for overtime. Those are the only two lines that we've ever exceeded our budget on, but we've always made up for it in other lines. So we're still well within that maintenance of effort, and I just wanted to clarify for everybody that we're not spending tax money on stamps and pencils and inmate meals and travel and all the other things that have been brought up. So that's all within maintenance of effort.
I think not too long ago, I asked you to come up with the SPRS unfunded liability, and I don't know if that's in the.
It's still in the works.
All right.
So,
Is that coming out of the MOE? The
so,
PRS?
so,
For the, is
Yeah,
that for
yeah.
the deputies that are,
The detention officers.
the detention officers that are working in a
Yeah.
jail?
The detention officers, I understand, quit the court system, and now they're going to be.
They didn't quit. They were directed
We got
to.
eliminated.
Stay
Yeah,
eliminated.
So when the state did pension reform, new employees,
2018?
after a certain date were defined contribution, not defined benefit. So they got 401ks. All right. So you guys were saying is that that's not it's not lucrative as the
Not attractive.
as the corporate
So,
pension.
Yeah,
was.
and there's a push in the legislature right now to try and get some.
Yeah,
kind
Kavanaugh's running that
yeah,
bill.
Try
Yes.
and get some kind of defined benefit for detention.
But you still have you should still have detention officers that are in the court system.
Correct.
That's what-
Yeah, if they were hired before a certain date,
Right.
they'll still be. You can't change their benefit.
Mr. Chair, to answer Mr. Proctor's question, it's a very small percentage. Probably about 78% of our detention officers, based on the highest turnover
The new system.
is in Newton.
Yeah.
Because they've all left.
Right.
So what is the county match for those 401ks? You guys know? What do we like? 8%, 10%?
Take what? I thought it was 5.
I have no
I
idea.
think 5 is pretty low.
Yeah.
Oh, that's low.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And I
that's
could be
why they're
wrong.
cranky. I mean,
But that's why we can't.
you know,
Yeah,
you
for cranky.
well, I mean, usually, you're looking at 8, 9, 10% on the corporate side where I'm at. It's usually, somewhere between 8 to 10% match.
And that's what's killing us on retention is the pay, the benefits, and something we've expressed all the way up to the governor. And
But it's worth it in the long run for us to do that, though,
yes,
to give them a bigger match because once they retire, it's their 401k and we don't have to pay them anymore,
Yeah.
you know, but now under the pension plan, regardless of how long they live, there's a constant obligation that they will receive that benefit until the day they die, and then their spouse gets it for a certain amount of time, a fraction of it, but I mean, still, the spouse gets it until the day they die. Whereas if you go to the 401k, you know, it's the pay now or pay me later scenario. And that's why the state went to that system, because the legacy costs were killing us. You know, it was better to offer them a decent 401k and provide a sufficient match that made it, you know, especially if the guy didn't do 5 years and he didn't get vested, he could work 2 years, take his 401k with him and go to the next job and roll it over. And that was an option that was nice for people that don't have to stay. Maybe they didn't like Arizona, you know, and they only like it 2 years, but you got to I could see why if you got a choice between corp and 401k, if the match is 5%, I could see why they're not happy about
And
it.
Mr. Chair, I think you got a whole 10 years before you can even get the county's contribution. So you only can take your own 401k.
What now?
You got to wait 10 years before you can pull in the county side with their contribution. Correct, right, Stacey?
What?
Yes,
Yeah,
so
you're not
They get no match?
Not for 10
Not
years.
officially
take it
prior
out
to
of-
that.
It's not
Mhm.
It's a
Oh
lose-lose.
my God.
It's a lose-lose. And work in the environment of a facility, correctional facility is just tough. It's
Mhm.
tough.
Yeah, I get you. But I mean, I'm just looking at it from the money side. I mean, that's all right. We got to talk about that later.
Yeah.
Because I mean, no, I mean,
No, it's.
no, I get
It's a
the
recruitment.
So if you do the cost benefit analysis versus the pension plan versus the 401k, you gotta offset the difference somehow, right? But it's a benefit to us, in this case, the government, to not pay that legacy cost. Now, it sounds morbid when I say this, because we're hoping they die early and they're hoping they live a long time, right? That's the way pension plans work. The government is gambling.
Living, buddy.
But no, that's the way it is. But if a 401k, it doesn't matter because they got that money, and if they die, they still got that money. Their wife gets that money, their kids get that money. So there's a recruiting potential there if you fund a 401k plan versus the pension plan. You could say, look, if you die, pension gets cut by 50%. When your wife dies, your kids get nothing. But
When I was
if you could-
24, I wasn't thinking about that at all.
no, I wasn't either. I'm telling you, but I'm very happy that I switched to a 401k plan but I was getting a decent match
Yeah.
in my 401k.
Yeah.
Right. So in lieu of the pension, you get the match. So if we're not providing a market-based match that the average 401k is offering, I could see why there's some disharmony amongst it. Boy, that word's been used a lot. Disharmony. But there's some unhappiness, with regard to the pension benefit or whatever it is, 401k pension benefit.
And
I get
they
it.
have done a lot of analysis on that, so I'll try to find some more information. to
Yeah,
share.
because that doesn't make.
Yeah, we have a copy of that. And it's
Yeah.
I know part of their revision that we're talking about with the court retirement is
Right.
to up that because it's so bad right now. And even the sworn side of it, pension plan has dropped to really nothing either. That's a big complaint. It's another one, it's 401k, and we've hurt public safety in the state when it comes to a lot of that. It's just, and that's why you're getting the caliber of a lot of places, especially rural communities where they can't afford it. It's rough.
All right, that's a whole nother work session.
Yeah.
But anyways, all right.
So in addition to the MOE funds that come over from the general fund, the jail does generate their own additional revenues. So when we're talking about order of precedence of spending, when we have expenditures within the jail district, we are going to use our MOE first, and then we're going to use our additional revenues. And if we have overruns, then we touch into the new taxes. So that last year they generated $306,000. This year,
That's it.
hey, it was a small jail before,
Well-
it had its thing.
But I mean, everybody that gets thrown in jail has to pay,
No,
right?
No.
No?
No.
You don't have to pay the jail fees when you.
So there, the county has the
consolidation.
the consolidated court agreement.
Code.
Yeah.
So there's only 2 municipalities, before the jail district was established, there's only 2 municipalities that actually paid incarceration costs, and that was Huachuca City and Tombstone, because they have their own magistrates. And that's done at the county administration level on how those contracts and agreements are done. The other people that we are the brig for Fort Huachuca. Their closest Army brig is in Yuma, so we do collect from them for their incarceration. We do charge ICE, and we're just a 72-hour courtesy hold. So if, on Friday night, if they arrest somebody around here, we'll let them keep them over the weekend, and then they got to take them to Tucson. We charge them.
I thought there was like a $70 a day if you get thrown
You know
in
what?
jail.
Any
fee.
reimbursement that goes through the courts comes back to the county in reimbursement, and it doesn't come back to our budget. It goes to your budget, the general fund. So we don't actually get that. So any revenue that comes that way isn't counted in here.
Mr.
So
Chair,
we get that money. The county general fund gets the money.
That's correct.
So somebody gets, let's just use an example, gets a DUI and they have to spend the day in jail and they have to pay the jail fee. That jail fee doesn't go to the jail.
So there's a small amount from all the citations that are written in the state,
Right.
and it's called the Jail Enhancement Fund.
Yeah.
So there's a formula by population and population of the
Like
jail
Hirsch
and
read.
everything else that they can't explain. But
Yeah.
there's a formula as how much we get every year in Jail Enhancement Fund. And that can only be used to enhance jail operations.
but Mr. Chair, under a jail district, you can't charge cities for booking.
No, no,
Yeah,
no.
we don't charge any
So a
municipality.
lot of that's
or
going to
anything
drop.
else. But what we still do is if, you live in Phoenix and you come down here and you go up Burry Gulch and have one too many martinis and get caught, and then you can say, hey, look, or if you're from Bisbee and you go to Phoenix and you get caught in Phoenix, you can go to the judge in Phoenix and say, hey, I actually live in Bisbee and I'm going to miss a lot of work if I
Can
have
you
to
put me in
drive.
jail in Bisbee?
Can I stay in Bisbee? And if the judge approves that, then we charge them our per diem rate, which right now I think is $211 and some cents the first day and $72 and change.
Yeah, that's what I
every day
thought. It was like 70 something bucks
Yeah.
a day.
And we're looking at there's 2 ways that they figure per diem cost. Is one with that administrative cost on the front end, but there's another where it's a flat rate no matter what, and we're looking to move to that flat rate because it's such a pain for people to try to figure out that first day.
Yeah.
So, and then it all equals out. And we hire, the county hires a company to come up with that, and they look at all the expenses and HR and everything that's involved in the cost of incarcerating somebody in jail, and that's how they come up with that per diem rate.
Maybe we should just privatize you guys, make you a private prison.
No, sir.
No,
Never.
talk about losing control.
Yeah.
Oh,
You-
so our budgeted amount for this year is just slightly higher. There you go. Yeah.
She's in control.
She's waiting to go for, I'm reading.
Larry's got me. Okay, so throughout the year, we do process budget amendments to our adopted budget. So the budget amendments that we've done for this fiscal year so far are the funding of the Sierra Vista Juvenile Center. So those 9 positions as approved by the previous board. We also have moved money to do the HVAC replacement. That money is rolled into the figures you see in FY25 under the maintenance and operations activity. And then pending was going to be the fire alarm, and I understand that was removed from the
Yeah,
agenda.
we're
So
going to do a work session.
yeah. So those are the budget amendments that have happened so far this year for the jail district, for moving from the new jail district activity into the existing. That makes sense?
The new jail tax
Yes, sorry. Yes.
into maintenance and operations.
Yeah. So new jail expenses to date, and this is life to date for the new jail. So we authorized an emergency repair to obstructed and damaged kitchen sewage lines, and that was in FY24. We have the attorney fees regarding the legal research on the RFQ, so to make sure it made the legal requirements that were in the document when we sent out for the RFQ. So we had that
They
reviewed.
only charge you $2,600 for that?
Mhm.
I think we got a deal.
Don't question it.
Yeah. So, interim public management consultant fees, that's Mr. Bordone over there, and then PIN planning. Those are the.
And to clarify, now
Mhm.
Bill is no longer with the interim public management. He's now an employee of the county, part-time employee, so those costs have been decreased in the future. Considerably.
Yeah.
decreased.
One thing I wanted to point out for you guys, since I know there have been some questions on, wages and employee-related expenses within the jail. I wanted to show you guys that in FY24, there was an overrun in the budget, and they were related to not wages for employees, like raises and things like that, but for overtime, temp employees, retirement, and workers' compensation. In FY25, we currently have an overrun in temp employees.
So this is, I guess, Commander Bradshaw would know, this is vacancies that you end up having to have guys work overtime for because you don't have the bodies to work those shifts?
That's the overtime part of it, but temp employees, a few years ago, the board authorized us 30 positions for part-time employees. So what we do is, like the Department of Corrections doesn't provide overtime. They work all off comp time. So we'll take a Department of Corrections employee, give them a couple of weeks of training since they already have experience in the correctional setting. And when we need staff, we post the calendar and say, hey, we need positions. We need a spot here and a spot here and a spot here and a spot here. We run them 4 hours at a time. And that's what those temp employees are.
And that's at a base salary with no EREs.
Yeah.
So it's very efficient for us.
Yeah. Mr. Crosby.
What is that doing to what I would think is a good thing, reducing or eliminating overtime? Not because I don't want them to make the money, because I don't want to be in jail permanently or almost permanently.
Right. And it helps immensely with overtime, especially because we're running 12-hour shifts. And we try very hard not to hold anybody over because they're already there for 12
So what do you do,
hours. It's a long time.
4 days or 12?
No, so it's 3 on, 2 off, 2 on, 3 off. It's a really great schedule. The staff love it. It's adopted throughout the state. A lot of people are going to it. The newest employee and the oldest employee on that schedule, every other week get Friday, Saturday, Sunday off on that 3-day. So it's 3 on, 2 off, 2 on, 3 off. And they just do it over and over and over again. So
I used to drive 50 miles and do one 40-hour shift in the juvenile detention facility.
Yeah.
Wow.
And 8 hours, they paid me to sleep for 8 hours somewhere in there. Went in on Friday, came out on Monday. Pretty crazy.
I think they don't win if we tried that.
Not built the
that was
same
before
flower.
the Fair Standard Labor Act.
It was a 50-mile drive to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to keep people from having to,
We have such a young workforce down there at the jail that, yeah, they wouldn't last 2 days. No, we're not doing that. They'd be gone.
The workman's comp stuff on there, tell me about that. What's
So the next.
is that paying the insurance? Is that what that is? The insurance payments,
So
the
the-
workman's comp?
Budgets are calculated based on rates provided by risk assessment,
Okay.
and sometimes they are undershot. That's the only difference on that.
Right, but that's the insurance payment. That's not, we're not paying out.
No.
workman's comp, right?
That's what we're paying towards
The
the,
insurance.
each employee is calculated on how much based on risk assessments percentages that they provide us. So I did want to give you guys a wages and employee-related expenses forecast through the end of the fiscal year. And the main takeaway on this one is that they are all forecast to come in under budget.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that shows that our wage increases that we have given and any kind of step changes, merit-based things that we have awarded to these employees is still keeping within our desired budget limits.
Always a good thing.
One thing I do need to bring up to you is we have a number of employees that are funded in the jail through a DEMA grant that expires on June 30th of this year. Those individuals are there for the prosecution and imprisonment of individuals charged with border-related crimes. The grant itself was $5.8 million over the duration of the grant. All of that money has been pulled down from the state, and currently we carry in our books $2.2 million to continue to be used.
How
do
long
not
does that
have-
last?
Let's see, it's
Based on, what you're paying out?
our FY25 budgeted amount is 1.15 or yeah, 1.15.
2 years.
Potentially. What we do not have word on yet, Secretary, are you in here? We still don't have word, is whether we will be allowed to continue to use that past the
Well,
deadline.
you
or
worried
if
about
we
them
may have
sweeping
to-
it?
Or we may have to
We're worried
remit
about
it.
that.
Yes, we do not have final word on that yet.
Mr. Chair, we're working on that. Commander Watkins and Captain Jerdier,
Yeah.
the policy and law affairs up there trying to make sure we can keep that money or get some money extended for us.
You shouldn't sweep it with a $984 million surplus right now.
I don't think they will.
I don't. No reason to sweep it.
What they should do and what they often do or sometimes.
Yeah.
I've done sweeps, man. I remember in 2009, 2010, we were searching the couch cushions for money at the state.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a different world right now.
So 16 jail staff positions are currently funded by that. I don't know what the intent is or whether you would keep all 16, but they do need to get moved from that fund. Whoever we keep or whatever we keep needs to get moved from that funding line into the jail district. So that would be an increase in expenses next year
And you said 2 years.
if we don't get to use it.
So if
we'll
we don't
start-
keep the money.
Yes, yes. So we'll
If
start-
If the
we'll
state
start
sweeps
that
the $2
planning.
million back,
Yes.
and then we got to figure out how to eat it.
We will conservatively plan and hope for the best.
Mr. Chair, I'm optimistic in the fact that adding 50 to DEMA, 50 to the Border Strike Force funds, that we will be able to push that key going. So we're on this like you can imagine, but we see where this could go. Thank you, State.
We also wanted to make you aware that we have potentially we might need to absorb into the jail district.
Yes.
And is that a total, you don't see the other positions?
No,
That's a total.
no.
Mhm. Mhm.
1.15 a year plus inflation. So you're probably looking at
So there are a number of mechanisms that are used to make salary adjustments for the jail staff. So we have pay scale changes that are produced by the Sheriff's Department. So historically, our detention officers in FY24 went from 40 to 45 starting. The detention officer corporals went from 51.5 to 59.2 starting. And then in FY25, there were further pay scale changes to bring the detention officers from 45 to 46.7 and the corporals from 59.2 to 61.8. The second type of salary adjustment that may happen for these individuals are market-based or performance-based salary adjustments. So in FY24, we were very conservative. The detention officers and detention officer corporals received no market adjustments or performance-based raises. The jail medical staff had an average of 2.71 with a range of 0 to 13.27% given across, I believe it's about 12 or 15 employees. The jail mental health staff received none as well. In FY25, we allowed market-based and performance-based salary adjustments with an average for detention officers at 5.58 and a range of 4.49 to 5.78. Detention corporals had a slightly lower average. There are less of them, 4.28, range of 4.07 or 4.38 on the high end. Jail medical staff also received them with an average of 5.14, going from 0 to 6.87. And our jail mental health staff received, we only have one person there, so they received a 6.86% increase. Current jail staffing right now sits at, you've got your historical numbers up there, and then you've got your this year numbers. So jail district is 74 individuals. Your DEMA grant is 16. We have one individual on the GIT'em grant who is 25% funded out of the jail district, and 2 individuals currently on the jail medical grant, which is reentry related. So these
That's
numbers,
the access grant.
No, that's.
no.
That's an opioid.
So,
Reentry grant.
yeah, these do not include the vacancies. These
So
are
is that
just
for-
for staffing.
Actual FTEs.
Yes. No, not FTEs, but bodies in positions.
But they're full-time employees.
That concludes my presentation.
Gotta find more taxpayers, man.
10,000 people who just kind of
You gotta expand the tax base in the county. We're gonna cannibalize ourselves. Stagnant population.
Mr. Chair, that's why we're so aggressive to cover these backfills, and we're going to do it again on what you're seeing here. If we can bring in that backfill with the state and partnership, it saves us some headaches at this table.
You're cracking on that cattle plant, me and you.
And I think so,
Yeah.
because Mexico's brought in a bunch of cattle just recently. Those big gates, man.
All right, any additional comments?
Just the PSPRS and the court unfunded liabilities and a little review on EREs versus unfunded liabilities. So when a grant comes through and it says this covers salaries and EREs, that my colleagues know that it doesn't cover unfunded pension liabilities under PERC and PSPRS Tier 1.
If Kavanaugh's bill passes, then there's going to be additional pension liability that's going to come to that too, so. Because you're going to give every corrections officer, or what do you guys call those guys?
Detention officers.
Yeah,
but
detention
they're the
officers.
same- Yeah, you
Thank
can, same job.
Yeah, you're going to have to pay their pension now too.
Those are the corps.
Right,
That's
but
what we're
it's still part of the,
I understand.
yeah.
I understand. And I've tried to tell people, this isn't like a mortgage. It doesn't go down necessarily just because you're paying on it.
Yeah.
Because it's based on how many people are working, how many people are not working, how many people are putting in, how many people are taking out.
Mr. Chair, one
And
of the
which
things
tier?
that the compromise as of last week was to up the contribution on the county side
Mhm.
as just like you said a minute ago, you're reading that well, and that's the compromise between sheriffs and CSA. So I think we're going to be able to come up with something reasonable without going to a formalized pension plan. It's not the answer we're looking for, but it's an answer that I think pays off in the long run, like you said. So that is the compromise on the table, just so you know.
It's better than opening up the pension liability.
Yeah.
No offense to those guys. I know
Oh, yeah.
having a pension. Yeah. But I spent 20 years in the Army. I only get $2,000 a month for that, man.
24 years in the Department of Corrections, I get about the same.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not a lot of money. Yeah. But it's still.
One other expense that might come up, there is a bill that's, I think, still being pushed through. It's called the pay parity bill.
What is it?
I gave you a copy of that.
Pay parity bill. So they're looking at detention officers and deputies being within a certain percentage. So deputies would have to be within a certain percentage of the top 3 agencies in the state, including DPS. And detention officers, corrections officers would have to be within 10% of the top 3 agencies or the Department of Corrections. So if that goes through, then that might be really expensive.
Sounds like an unfunded mandate.
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dictating what
Yep.
to pay.
Again, you got counties like Pima and Maricopa that have the economic base and the tax base. They could probably eat it, but
It wouldn't even affect them because they'll be counted as one of the top 3 already.
right.
So they would
The baseline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Base.
Yeah.
I'd encourage it, and Sharon's, and Stacey knows got it, is that plan the CSA just put out, and it gives you a good idea. You'll look at Cochise County, whether it's sworn or it's detention officers, we're in the bottom quad on both sides. So, I mean, we're competing with Graham, Greenlee, La Paz,
Mhm.
and those aren't, most sheriff's offices start 63, 65,000, same as GPS right now in the state. We're like the bottom 5.
Mhm.
So that's, and we just been trying to stay competitive, if that makes any sense. And we have a very low turnover in our deputies, mainly because we try to put that confidence and support for them. But it's a tough challenge, and I respect. That's why we try to do so many of these programs, grants.
Mhm.
Population's killing us.
Yes.
And we've had the same population for 30 years in this county. It has not grown.
It's going
Yeah,
down.
and it's getting older and they're paying less taxes. It's like the ultimate recipe for disaster. If we don't do something on the economic side here in the next couple of years, it's going to be,
It's like they're all over the country.
not really. If you look at Maricopa County, their average age is going down.
But there, that's a
No, but
exception to everything.
well, I got you. But I'm saying, there's counties where the average median age is dropping, and then there's counties like ours where the median age is going up. Generally, people that get older don't have kids and all that. They don't spend a lot of money because all that's done. I tell you, 25 to 55, that's where the money's at. 25 to 55-year-olds. Old guys like us, where our kids are gone, we're in sit on the porch, drink beer in the rocking chair mode. We don't spend a lot of money. We don't spend a lot of money, but the 25 to 55, and that's where we're hurt in this county. We got to get those jobs for that age group in here.
And then falls in hospital because he wants to go to a place like Douglas when you have to be air backed out and there's nothing for you
And
to
nobody
get.
wants to raise taxes. I'm not a big guy for raising taxes, but people are demanding the services, but that tax pool is shrinking.
I agree. Yeah, if we can, and that's one of the things, like you mentioned earlier, if we can bring that training down to Cochise College, get our federal partners trained down there in our local community college and some of the things we're doing, the homegrown police academy, all that adds stability and adds jobs, hopefully. And that's what we're trying. We're pushing that, so.
Yeah, that's great. Douglas does have housing. That's one of the great things. That's what they do.
Yep. Oh, wrong one. That's what they're saying too.
All right. Any other? We don't have a 3 on there, do we? No. Any others?
No,
Nope.
sir.
All right. So the next meeting will be a special board meeting, possibly executive session tomorrow, February 12th at 10 a.m. in the executive conference room to discuss potential candidates to replace our county recorder, Mr. Stevens. So with that, we're adjourned.